the law has recently changed here in Arizona to increase the minimum liability limits that a person who's registered and driving a vehicle must carry here in Arizona. We went from 15, 30, 10, and that was increased to 25, 50. I'd like your thoughts on that. Do you feel like that was sufficient, or do you feel like it should have been more? So your thoughts on Arizona increasing the minimum limits to 25, 50. Did they go far enough with that?
Probably about every other or every third year, there is a proposal to increase the minimum required rate of insurance here in Arizona. Let me talk about what that means. Before this change, which takes effect in July, the minimum coverage required by law in Arizona was what we call a 15-30-10 policy. And what that means is that the maximum the insurance company would pay out if a claim were made due to the fault of one of their insureds is $15,000 on any individual claim and capped at $30,000 per incident, meaning if there were 1, 3, or 10 people with claims under a particular accident, it would still top out at $30,000 total. So $15,000 per person, $30,000 total, and the 10 means $10,000 toward property damage. No matter what property damage was actually done, it stops at $10,000. First off, it needs to be clarified that those standards were set in, it was the 1970s, I believe 1973. There was finally an increase passed through last year that takes place this summer. It moves it from $15,000 to $25,000, which makes it, instead of a 15-30-10, we're going to have a 25-50-25. Now, is that enough of an increase? First off, it's good that there was an increase. It means that there's that much more coverage available if somebody were to injure you or a family member. And that much more protection that the average person has on their policy if they have coverage at all, which they're supposed to. Was it enough? Well, if you want to take inflation into account, it looks pretty meager. If you were to actually just simply adjust for inflation, then the minimum policy should be about $90,000. Okay, so instead of, if this same law were passed in 1973 and put at the equivalent of $15,000 then the minimum policy would be closer to the $100,000 mark, which means that a $100,000 policy would be closer to $500,000, right? So was it enough? Well, that's for an individual to decide. But if you adjust for inflation, then if you want to have the same coverage now as the minimum policy was back in the 70s, you would carry at least $100,000. If you want to have the equivalent of the $100,000 policy, you're carrying something closer to $500,000. And so, long answer, but from that standpoint, you need to protect yourself better than the minimum coverage in most circumstances. You can think of how quickly, $25,000 can disappear if somebody is injured in a hospital for any length of time.